Back on the build up this morning, Ethan Skolnick, 5 Reasons Sports is here. He doesn't have a lot of time, so we'll get right into it. Did they mail in the Jimmy Butler tribute yesterday?
I don't think so. It was about 40 seconds. Now, some Heat fans timed it, and LeBron's was longer, Shaq's was longer.
Mm.
But honestly, it had most of the key moments. We did an episode of Five on the Floor, Alex and I, where we went through what would be, was it Alex and I or Brady and I? I can't even keep it
You've done
straight.
so many pods, you can't remember.
No, it was Alex and I. We went through what should be in the tribute video. And somebody who was involved in it afterwards says, "We got most of it, didn't we?" And they did, actually. They just got it very quickly. And in my view, they weren't required to do anything at all. So the complaints about the tribute video just came off as, I think, sort of petty from those around Jimmy. Like, there was the complaint by, his. I mean, we know who his guy is the only person he went up to and talked to after the game.
Hmm.
And the complaint was that they were doing it during warm-ups. We knew that like 3 or 4 days before, but I kind of told someone I wouldn't say anything, but we hinted at it that it was going to be done during warm-ups. I'm not during warm-ups, excuse me, during introductions. And and that's when you do that, okay? Like, and then the complaint was, well, they know that Jimmy's routine is to be in the back during that, so they're doing this intentionally to set him up. Trust me, okay? There's nothing Machiavellian going on here behind the scenes. I've never seen such levels of paranoia, which, by the way, played into this entire process throughout. The levels of paranoia, they were
Sure.
doing it to get it out of the way. They wanted to just show Jimmy some respect, take the high road, allow the fans to have their moment to decide what they were going to do. And then they knew what was going to happen after that, which is he was likely going to get booed every time he touched the ball, because that's what happens to guys when they come in, even if they don't act the way that Jimmy did during the end of this. So I thought it was fine. I thought it was tasteful. Um, if you wanted more stuff of him out there doing things in the community, then I guess he should have done more stuff out there in the community. I don't know what to say. I mean, but was it supposed to be 3 hours on the coffee business? Like, they they captured a lot of the excitement that he gave Heat fans for a period of time, which he
Uh-huh.
did, which he deserves respect for. He's a top 5 player in Miami Heat history. I had him at number 3 before all of this. I I don't know if I'll change it back to 4 or 5 at some stage, but
Mm.
he's not getting his jersey retired, so this was what it was gonna be, and I thought it was fine.
You don't think this could be a time heals situation? Like as
No.
it pertains to the jersey retirement, as it pertains to the relationship. The dangerous thing, and this is where Greg Sylvander was on here 2 days
Mm,
ago. We talked about whether or not time can heal this and whether or not they actually have time because Pat Riley just turned 80, not to make this grim.
mm, right.
So I wonder about that element of it too. Um, Bobby Marks said,
No, well, let me answer on that real quick.
yeah, yeah.
Anytime I've suggested in any way that maybe he'll get his jersey retired, or anytime anybody else in the media has gone on some outlet and suggested that maybe someday he'll get his number retired, somebody texts and says, "There's no effing way." So is that? It's not just me, by the way. Others have got these texts from a variety of people.
Yeah.
So I well, could time heal? I mean, the LeBron thing looks different now, but I was in the middle of that at the time, and I always thought time would heal that.
This is nastier than that though.
Oh, much,
Yeah,
much,
yeah.
much, much, much. The fans were more hurt by what LeBron did than many in the organization were. Pat was, because Pat and I did a long sit down with Pat after it happened, and he was hurt because he thought he'd built this generational team that they were all going to go to each other's barbecues and be together forever. There had been this bond that was there. I don't even think Pat realized how sort of toxic it gotten the last year of the big three era anyway. That last year is I did a story with Dwayne for Bleacher Report the year after. We talked about last year wasn't fun. A lot of the players, Shane, Ray, were tired of Spo. LeBron was tired of Dwayne not playing or him not knowing whether Dwayne was playing. There was a lot of stuff by the last year. Rio was not there. A lot of them were not happy. It had run its course. Okay. Um, But to Pat, they were this generational team, and that LeBron broke up. I think over time, there's been a recognition in the organization. LeBron was always going to leave. Like, we can talk about cookies on the plane or any of this other stuff. And there was
Ice cream, Dan Le Batard says.
right. Okay. There was all of this that was reported by Stephen A. about how his guys couldn't get the seats they wanted. By the way, that was from before he even arrived. They were trying to buy up all the season tickets so they could resell them. Like, some of this stuff got misreported at the end of it, but it was not like this. I mean, LeBron didn't take the shots at the organization and didn't act this way to his teammates. He didn't act this way to
Yeah.
that's the part that gets me. LeBron was always about his teammates, always. Jimmy was not at the end.
So let's stay here because I want you to tell us in detail, but we had not reports, but people telling us basically, and you saw this. He and Bam didn't really interact except for the photo that I used for the cover photo of this, where they were face to face. And
No.
Bam. I told Greg, I was like, the main thing I want to see on the floor is what happens when Bam picks him up on a switch, and it happened right away. And in fact, they didn't even need to switch. He was just guarding him for a lot of the night.
He wanted to guard him.
That felt intentional. Tyler
Yes.
says they didn't speak. Jimmy
Yes.
himself said he only spoke to like Kevin Love and Terry Rozier, and that's kind of it. So give us more on that, like the lack of communication both ways, so to speak. And people watching, thank you. Comments, questions, all that stuff, super chats as well. We'll get to some comments before we wrap here because we have to wrap in a little bit.
Well, I feel a little validated on this because we've been reporting this. He had basically by the end 2 allies left. One was Rozier, and one was Jovic. And now Nico is, again, with Nico, it's lovable. Jimmy took an interest in him. Nico's he's just like that kind of affable personality and all of that. Terry, they bonded clearly. I saw them together a lot and in the Bahamas when I was down there for training camp. Kevin's a little more complicated. Kevin is just a really, as we've gotten to know him a little bit. It's funny. I wish I'd gotten to know him better in Cleveland when I covered up there for a year, but I don't think he was exactly the same Kevin Love that he is now. He just honestly he cares about Jimmy's mental well-being. That's the way that it's been put to me. Like everything that was done, and you know how big Kevin is on those kind of issues.
Got another commercial out now on it,
right? And Kevin, the way the organization viewed what Kevin was doing was he's just trying to smooth everything over. He wanted to make sure Jimmy was okay too with everything that was playing out, and that's why they didn't have a problem with what he was doing. And I do think that he genuinely cares about Jimmy as a human being. That does not necessarily mean, and not that I've had any conversations with Kevin about this specifically, but I'm just saying it doesn't necessarily mean they agreed with everything that Jimmy was doing. The rest of them, and we watched this, by the way. We saw on the court beforehand. He gave Kevin a long embrace. He did dap up Burks, okay, who obviously he just played with for this season, and that was it. It wasn't just he didn't look at Bam. Bam wouldn't even go up to the center line. He was backing up. We were watching
before
Bam.
tip off.
Yeah, he didn't want any part of Jimmy.
And Bam is he greets people before tip off. Like
he's like the most affable person in the entire league.
Yeah, he's one of these dudes that I don't know how much Heat fans understand it, but is universally liked around the league by a lot of people.
Everyone,
like a lot of people.
Okay, so if you're Bam, how would you feel? How would you feel?
Oh, I'd be pissed off.
You're the captain of the team.
Because if you're Bam, you were thrown under the bus.
Yes.
Like if Jimmy is turning his back on the entire team, Bam is the captain of that team. Bam is the cornerstone, the long-term drafted, like the best player that they've drafted and developed since Dwayne Wade.
Beyond that, Brian, it's more than that.
And behind the scenes, yeah.
It's that who had to do all the stuff, the public-facing stuff that Jimmy refused to do.
Jimmy doesn't want to do media. Bam does it.
Jimmy wasn't in the community. Bam
Mhm.
is in the community,
Mhm.
the media stuff, all of that. And then additionally, you have Jimmy's friends who are constantly taking these shots at Bam on social media. You think he
Mhm.
doesn't see that? You
Right.
think he doesn't hear about that? You think
Right.
the people around him don't tell him that? So you're in the trenches with this guy for almost 6 years. You go to 2 finals together, almost a third final. It was the 2 of them, right? Tyler was hurt for part of it when they got there. There were guys like Gabe and Max and Caleb, they're no longer here. It was you and him, okay?
Mhm.
We always talked about the lack of on-court offensive chemistry. Some of that was style, some of it was Jimmy wouldn't pass to him. We you
A
go
lack
through
of
the pass
assists.
numbers from,
Yeah.
okay, all of the lack of assists from Jimmy. Jimmy, who obviously is a good passer, can find anybody. He was never really finding Bam consistently. Um, he never really did anything to prop Bam up in any way. He didn't want some of the responsibilities that Bam had. And then you're
Well,
dealing with this
Ethan, he
erratic personality in the locker room when you're just friends with everybody. It's I when I Brian, when I saw Bam in the Bahamas, he's always hanging out with the G League guys. He hangs out with the
yeah.
entire roster. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? But you never
But
saw him hanging out with Jimmy.
But in the beginning, like the
Mhm.
that first year, I did feel like he propped up Bam. Like there were times where he would say, "Bam's the
Yeah,
best player on our team. We're gonna go as
yeah.
far as Bam could take us," and that slowly, like, just sort of died out. I don't know if it was by the second year, whatever the case may be, or the third year, but it was early on in his Heat tenure where it felt like there was like a legit chemistry there. There was the slam shoot, obviously, that they did with
Mm,
Tyler Hero, who was
right.
a rookie at the time, and that just sort of dwindled as time went on, it feels like. Am I wrong about
Well,
that?
well, you're not wrong. Jimmy did these kind of things. I mean, one of the very first things that Jimmy did when he came in, I wrote a piece about how his teammates all really liked him. We had the whole honeymoon phase. I wrote a very long piece for our website where I talked to a whole bunch of guys on the team about Jimmy, and this was in 19 before COVID. So he came in, but so obviously COVID, and then they had the run in the bubble. But prior to COVID hitting, and one story that Tyler told me was that as soon as Jimmy came in, he called Tyler and he said, "Get up to Chicago." He says, "You're going to spend
That's
some
right.
time with me in Chicago." He brought him up to Chicago. In fact, Jimmy had to fly down to close on a property, and Tyler flew down with him. Okay,
Mhm,
Tyler Tuesdays, they had their ebbs and flows too.
mhm.
But there's a couple things that I can say that some of the organization think affected it. One thing was that Kyle came in, who's someone Jimmy wanted. This is why all this stuff about they never got him anybody he wanted. I mean, they got him the guy he wanted, and that was the guy in that free agent period. Look at that free agent class. There wasn't a whole lot else out there.
Important. People should remember the GM survey. I bring this up every time this comes up.
Mhm,
Kyle
mhm.
Lowry was voted by the NBA GMs as the most impactful free agent signing, as a signing who's going to be
Yes.
like the best signing or whatever. And he went to the Heat that year. So for people who say like they didn't get him help or whatever, that was the offseason that they got him. They got PJ Tucker. I think they also got Caleb Martin on the two-way, which turned out to be
Yes.
pretty important.
Yes, they did.
But that offseason, they did the things and became the one seed. It was just after that, we can talk about. But yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. And they did, and Kyle did a lot of good things that year, and particularly when Bam and or Jimmy was out, he kind of carried with, he played a lot with the second unit. He did a good job then. But there are those who believe that Jimmy's behavior got worse after that
Yeah.
because Kyle never bought into any of the Heat culture stuff. He was still in Toronto, really. And so it's kind of similar. And I don't totally blame Kyle for this either because I saw Dwayne go through it when Dwayne went to Chicago and it wasn't like Miami was, and he never really fit in there. When you're used to a certain place for a very long time and you're deified in that place and you get away, you're not, well, not that Dwayne was trying to get away with things in Miami because he really wasn't. But when the culture conforms to you because of who you are and they know you so well. And look, Toronto didn't draft Lowry like he was with 4 teams before them, but it's where he fit the best. And obviously the Heat drafted Dwayne. So I don't totally blame Kyle for that. But again, he never really bought in from the very beginning. Kyle, to a large degree, came down to play golf. I mean, that's pretty much what it was. And the whole Heat culture thing, he didn't buy into the mythology of Riley, which is something that the organization works very hard to maintain. Um, for a variety of reasons. And I kind of agree based on looking back at it. I didn't think it at the time, but with what some feel that when Kyle came in, that Jimmy kind of went south.
Yeah.
In terms of now, they still had a finals run. They still had a near finals run. So the performance justified giving him certain leeway that you didn't give to other players. But when you're giving it to him and it's still not enough, right? Still wants more training away from the team, not to be in the same hotel, to fly up when he wants, and all that. And again, now let's take it back to his teammates. His teammates aren't getting any of that.
Right.
Bam's not getting any of that. He's the captain,
Right.
right? Um, I'm just saying, I'm not surprised. I hadn't heard specifically because of the way he does. He's not going to vocalize it publicly, but I wasn't exactly sure how Bam would act last night, but the way he acted kind of validated everything I believed he should believe
Hmm.
and should feel based on what I'd witnessed. And I'm happy for him, honestly, that he took that assignment and that he won that assignment so easily last night. And now the question for the Heat, and it's not going to happen this year because the rest of the team is not good enough. But the question for the Heat is, can they get that Bam more often?
Mm.
Can they get that Bam who from the very beginning takes shit personal? And sometimes I have felt like he's just too nice.
Hmm.
And he doesn't have that. Look, Dwayne was really nice. That you can't get anybody behind the scenes to say anything bad about Dwayne's tenure, unlike Jimmy, by the way. It's a polar opposite situation. The staff last night was like, I'm not gonna say the things they said
Well,
publicly, okay?
okay, but I wanted to
I
ask you about that. I wanted to like
yeah.
in whatever detail you could tell us. What have the last 24 to 48 hours been like for people in that organization? So not just players, although players too, but
Mm,
coaches, staffers, like
yeah.
administrators or whatever the case may be, coaches, front office.
Well, yeah, no, I'll get to, one thing I want to say is Dwayne was a killer when he had to be. Great, great
Yes.
person behind the scenes. Okay, I have much love for Dwayne for things he's done for me personally, etc. But killer when he wanted. That's what they need from Bam. As far as behind the scenes, I've never seen. I've been around the organization since '96. Okay, I was there for Zoe, who was difficult for a while. Timmy, who was difficult. Okay, especially with Pat. Uh, Shaq, difficult. Bron, not as difficult as people assume, but had his own people around and all the rest of that. Uh, the enmity for Jimmy with the staff it's incomparable. It just is.
Incomparable.
And they just wanted it. They just separate and that's it. Now maybe we can separate and go on. Um, I keep coming back to the LeBron thing on this because I was there during the big 3 years, and I know that LeBron and people talk about his entourage and all this kind of stuff. I there was always respect. There was always respect, okay? And I get it that Heat fans and Pat were not happy about him, already knowing what he was going to do, and yet, Pat and Andy are playing sad blackjack in Vegas and all the rest of that, and waiting there while he's watching soccer. LeBron is non-confrontational about a lot of these kind of things, believe it or not, and I witnessed that many times, and sometimes I don't think he knew how to handle certain things, or he would kind of let his ego get in the way. But the difference with LeBron and Jimmy, as the way that the organization views it, is the things LeBron did were not like malicious.
Yeah.
I think that's the key point, and why I think that this has smoothed over. And as someone I was in Cleveland after LeBron left, I was there a lot for Bleacher Report. They set me up there to continue covering him, but I was going back and forth between him and the Heat. Every time I came down to Miami, UD and Spo would ask me what was going on with LeBron in Cleveland, and every time I was up in Cleveland, LeBron would pull me aside and say, "What the heck did Riles say now?" But there was over time, okay, conversations I had with LeBron then, and then things he has said since. He came to really, he wasn't. He would kind of needle Bosch behind the scenes a little bit when they were down here, but when you started to talk to him about him once he was up there, or Spo, the way he kind of his feelings about Spo changed after he left. I think there was a real appreciation for his time in Miami. I think that LeBron has sometimes he's had difficulty vocalizing it. he's better at vocalizing it than Jimmy is.
Yeah.
And so you getting back to the original part of this, like, will this ever smooth over? Not while current ownership and the current team president are there. That's not he. I mean,
Hmm.
he's not getting his number retired then. And then at that point, what's the point? I mean, we're going to be so many years down the line. Whereas I think with Bron, I think once he retires, uh, Cleveland will obviously retire his number immediately.
Mhm.
I'm curious to see what the Lakers do because they have so many numbers up there. But again, the man did win a championship with
They're gonna
them, and
retire it. They're gonna retire it.
they're
All the
likely to
great
retire.
players
And
that they have, they're gonna feel almost obligated, like, we have to, you know?
well, probably so. And then I think after that, Miami will do the same thing. Right after it, we saw that obviously the Lakers and the Heat both honored Pat this year. I could see something similar happening with LeBron, and I think
Yeah.
he absolutely deserves it. I don't think fans were upset that he didn't thank them. First thing, that's not true. He did in a Bleacher Report in an uninterrupted video. It just took longer than everybody wanted it to.
Yeah.
But it was it was never this. It was just never this.
Okay, questions before we get out of here because we're about to get out of here. Ethan has to go. Carl says, "So happy for the team. Must have felt like Joe Frazier when he dusted off Ali after he was talking all that shit." Fun fact: the first person to beat Joe Frazier was George Foreman, who recently passed.
Yep.
R.I.P. Beat the shit out of him too. Knocked him down 6 times. Bobby Marks said that he like got on Heat fans for cheering Jimmy Butler, and I felt like there were a
No.
lot of boos. Like I thought it was going to be
Yeah.
70-30 boos. It sounded like 90-10, maybe 95-5. Could you tell us more about the crowd reaction to that?
Yeah. Again, I great respect for Bobby. I think he's one of the best people who works at that place. But I don't really agree with him about this for a couple of reasons. First thing is, remember, the Warriors travel, okay, really well, and their fans do. I mean, and like when I was walking into the building, everybody had a Steph jersey on. So I actually broke the news to a couple that he wasn't playing. Sorry.
Oh
Um,
shit.
and and again, he's my favorite player of this generation to watch. And I was
Mhm.
more disappointed about that than anything else last night because you get to see him once a year and then his pregame routine. And I just have just tremendous respect for Steph, the way he treats people. If you watch behind the scenes, it's like him and Giannis are the two if that I can never say a bad thing about. I watch the way that they treat folks in the visiting locker room, the way they take care of the equipment guys in there and all that. It's just like Steph is who you believe he is, and I don't really feel that way about a lot of athletes that I've been around. And so I was disappointed that he wasn't playing, honestly. But most of them had Steph jerseys on, and there were a lot of Warriors fans there. So I think you have to factor that into some of the cheering that went on there. And also, even with it, I don't think it was quite 90-10. We were like, it's kind of like 55% booze. That's sort of what Brady, Alex, and I felt when we were on press row. But it played out the way we thought, which was that they would
It
cheer
sounded
him
like more
during
as the
that.
game went on. It sounded like
Yes,
more.
but it always is.
Yeah.
It's typically, if you do the video up front, I think that's the way the Heat wanted it too, was you get it out of the way. You allow the fans to view his great moments. He was out there for it, regardless of what his friend said was going to happen. He saw it. He seemed to appreciate it at the time. Okay. I know another of his friends, someone else he greeted after the game, who tends to be a little more rational than the other friend, that he said it wasn't long enough. You can take that, but this is just my opinion. Um, Again, I don't know. Was it supposed to be 2 hours, or we just sat there and drank coffee? I'm
Right.
not. I'm not really sure. It was
To be
nice.
fair,
Okay.
the music choice was awful, I thought, as well. But who cares at that point? You
The
know what I
music
mean?
choice wasn't as rousing as what they typically do. I will say that. But the clips were all in there. You had the
Yeah.
timeout, and you had other things that you remember, and it gave the fans a chance to voice whatever their opinion was. I did not think it was 90-10 negative, though. I thought it was closer to 50-50. But then, as happened when LeBron came back, okay, when he touched the ball, you boo. Now,
That's what I'm referring to. I mean 90-10 as the night
yeah.
went on, not at the
Oh,
beginning.
as the night went on, but see, I thought it was gonna. I predicted before the game that it could pivot back the other direction if the Warriors were blowing the Heat out, because then Heat fans were going to leave,
Yeah.
and you were going to be left there with Warriors fans. So naturally, they were going to be cheering for what was going on, but instead, it was the Warriors fans who left. I mean, that was a thorough ass kicking. I mean, we have to look. This is a team that just lost 10 straight games. And here's the thing. Here's the thing, Brian. Don't ever let Spoelstra tell you when a game doesn't mean something to him.
Yeah. He
I
played
never
8,
believe
right?
he played
Until
eight.
garbage time.
I don't count that. He played. He played 8, and really he played 7.5. But then he gave Kyle Anderson more minutes in the second half. And by the way, I thought played very well. Not only did he play 8, think of who he played.
Yeah.
Okay,
The main characters.
3 of the 8 he played, and he played them all heavy minutes, came over in the trade.
Also, we saw Haywood Highsmith, which we don't see him all the time, it feels like now. So
Well,
I think
because
that was
Haywood was one of the guys who he's never going to say it. So I know H is never going to say it.
But he doesn't have a good relationship with Jimmy at all, or a relationship with Jimmy at all, to put it mildly.
I don't really know where it came from. I'm not sure. They couldn't be more different in personality, although Jimmy, I thought, liked guys who came out of the mud, which
They were
is
Sixers
what
teammates at one point.
Haywood did, yes. But I don't know. I saw them interact at times. It was mostly Jimmy needling him. You can never tell. Their lockers were right next to each other. Haywood has made a couple of comments about how he has more space now, but Jimmy took over the second locker. But I never. I don't know. Haywood, I don't know how anybody could beef with Haywood Highsmith. I just don't. Like, look, the Duncan stuff, and Duncan didn't play last night. Duncan would have probably dropped 8 threes on Jimmy just to get all out of his system. But the Duncan stuff you could kind of understand because, he was all over Duncan from like the very start. And like, even to the point of like when Duncan would do something good, as you remember, he'd be like, yeah, but Max this or Max that. I love Max. But like, it was the way he would compare Duncan and Max was, you can understand how Duncan would have an issue with that. But the Haywood thing, I don't think it was no surprise that Haywood wanted to turn to defend Jimmy. And Haywood was plus 25 with no points, which I joked with him after the game about. It was like one of the better 0-point games we've ever seen. He's like, well, I was trying to get something. But to have a beef with Haywood Highsmith is just kind of weird to
Bam
me.
too, also.
Yeah, but I mean Haywood. I mean, Bam was a first-round pick. Okay, Jimmy, we know has issues with guys who were drafted higher than him. This is kind of gets back to the whole Towns thing and the Simmons thing and all that. But I don't know that the Haywood thing was always kind of weird to me. Look, Jimmy's guys in that locker room are mostly gone. He had a very good. I mean, him and Gabe were good. Him and Max were good.
Goran, Kyle,
PJ. Those were more his guys. The current locker room, and the other part of it that's kind of funny, and I know personal is different than professional, but like one of the reasons the team was so bad or didn't have enough help was because they traded a first-round pick for Terry Rozier, and yet Terry Rozier is the one guy that he went up to. The one thing I want to close on the teammates thing is that you mentioned Tyler, and I just want to hit that quick here.
Yes.
Tyler after the game was asked, "Did you talk to Jimmy, or did you guys have a chance to reflect or converse?" Now, I respect the person who asked the question. We knew they didn't. It was obvious they didn't. Okay, so I think it was just to try to evoke a response from Tyler, and he's like, "No," and he paused. He's like, "No. If you're Tyler, and we were speculating on this on the way out, and again, we're not psychologists, or psychiatrists or whatever. But it seems to me that if you're Bam, you have a right to be angry about the way that this went down and the way that this guy kind of sabotaged the team, his friends, basically saying you're not good enough all the time on social media, which is kind of what they did with Bam. If you're Tyler, I think you got a right to be hurt. This was Tyler's breakout season, and it seemed like Jimmy did everything he could to shit on it. Right? Like it's just and their interactions when I would watch them, I know we had Tyler Tuesdays and all that sort of stuff. They were always more jovial and friend oriented than it seemed like Bam and Jimmy's were.
I agree.
It felt like they would have their moments where they were not as close, and I know that there were a couple things that happened behind the scenes over the 5 or 6 years that I won't speak to, but when you saw them together, and even that press conference, we're 1A and 1B, which was
Mhm.
like 2 months ago, okay, 2, 3 months ago, not even that long ago. I I don't know. It felt to me like, Tyler is, he's still a young guy in the game. He just had his first All-Star game. I know the season hasn't gone the way that he wanted to from a team perspective, but I can understand why he would be hurt by what went down and kind of confused about all of this. But I think that's what Jimmy leaves. He leaves a wake of in his wake. He leaves confusion and destruction. And that's kind of what happened to this team this year. And I don't blame them for taking great joy in it. I don't think that team is going anywhere. The team Jimmy's on, Steph obviously makes them tremendously different. But even with Steph, I don't think they have enough creation. I think we saw that last night.
Mhm.
And I think if unless they draw Houston in the first round, because of the lack of experience, I think they're a first round out. I think if they get Denver, they've lost 11 straight to Denver. They're not beating Denver. So that's the way that I view them. And so if Jimmy's going to be a first round exit, I mean, what was all this for? Money,
Yeah.
I guess.
They could still fall into the play and actually the way it's shaking out.
Yeah.
But yeah, if the playoffs ended today or the playoffs
Hmm.
started today, they'd be playing Denver, which
Yep.
Denver's banged up, but that's not the matchup you
Yeah.
want.
Yep.
All right, Ethan has to go. Thank y'all for watching. Rewatch this if you'd like. See if there's anything you missed because I saw a bunch of people jump in as this went on.
Hmm.
And Ethan will have more on this. So follow him and
Yes.
subscribe to the channel. Hopefully you liked what you heard. We'll have more to come on the channel, as always, very soon. Thank you for the support, and we will talk.